Welcome to the Monday edition of the World Report with me, Priyanka Das, for a roundup of the top global stories. European stocks dropped sharply on Monday, deepening a global market rout that kicked off last week following the latest announcement of US President Donald Trump's tariffs regime. Stock futures tumbled early Monday, with contracts tied to the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 dropping more than 5%, Dow Industrial Futures down 4%, Asian stock markets plunged, the Nikkei 225 dropped nearly 8%, Bitcoin and oil prices fell sharply. Meanwhile, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index is on track for its biggest one-day percentage loss since the 2008 global financial crisis. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump said that he is not intentionally engineering the ongoing stock market sell-off, but said little to try and dissuade it. Listen in.
I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something. And we have such a horrible, we have been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen. They took our businesses, they took our money, they took our jobs, they moved it to Mexico, they moved it to Canada, they moved a lot of it to China, and it's not sustainable. We're not going to do it.
In uncertain times, the Australian economy is well placed because of the progress that Australians have made together these past 3 years. These escalating trade tensions are casting a dark shadow over the global economy.
Let's go across to my colleague Sakshi Bajaj to get the latest. Sakshi, take us through how the Asian and European markets have reacted to the US stocks, which declined massively on Friday. And what can we expect once the US markets open?
Absolutely. A tariff turmoil really being felt across the globe. As you were mentioning, we saw Asian markets plunge, Asian markets extend that decline, and then we saw European markets also witness a massive sell-off at open. We have seen, remember, Asia stock markets tumble in trade significantly. We've seen the Nikkei tumble over 8%. We have seen Hong Kong's Hang Seng witness a loss of over 10%. And we have seen Asia's markets really extend that sell-off. Now, why is this happening? Well, this is happening as, of course, the tariff uncertainty is now weighing on investor sentiment. Remember, there are concerns on inflation. There are concerns on how this will impact global supply chains altogether and the world economy at large. We have, of course, also seen the European markets plunge in trade. We've seen Germany's market crash over 10% in early trade. We have seen Paris, London, all these stock exchanges witness a downfall of over 6% already. So really an impact being felt across the globe. And remember, we've heard JP Morgan say there's a probability of 60% as far as world recession is concerned now. We've seen Goldman Sachs say that, look, now there's a probability of a 45% US recession as compared to their earlier already revised outlook of 35%. So a complete meltdown across the globe. Investors really jittery. Remember, investors don't like uncertainty, and US President Donald Trump is giving them just that.
Right, Sakshi, stay with us. We'll just come to you in a moment. Now, the Indian equity markets also plunged sharply on Monday, with the Nifty 50 dropping 5.07% to 21,743 and the Sensex tumbling 3,939.68 points to 71,425. Now, this decline came amid a global wave of the risk-off sentiment, yet India has managed to emerge as the second best performing market in Asia for the day. The sell-off was sparked by the escalating global concerns following US President Donald Trump's tariff announcement, which triggered retaliation from China. The ongoing trade tensions have rattled investor confidence, injecting extreme volatility into markets worldwide. Let's go across to Sakshi to get more details. Now, Sakshi, the Dalal Street was hurting majorly in the first half of the trading session. Which are the indexes that have been impacted the most? But as we understand, Indian markets have fairly been insulated from the rest of the markets when compared to the other Asian markets, so to speak.
Right. Well, NDTV has been speaking to analysts, and of course, the broader understanding really is that India's stock markets are resilient. India's macroeconomic fundamentals remain strong. India is resilient, but having said that, India cannot be insulated from what's happening in the rest of the world. So we have seen global markets plunge, as we were explaining our viewers, and now we've seen India's stock markets also witness a meltdown. We have seen the Nifty and the Sensex tumble over 3.5% in trade. We've seen the BSE small cap and mid cap tumble over 4%. We've seen the volatility index, remember, spike spike to over 60% in trade, and investors lose over 16 lakh crore in early trade alone. So this, of course, is significant as far as the market mood in India is concerned. Remember, of course, investors are in wait-and-watch mode as to what happens next. The US President Donald Trump, we just heard reactions from him. He remains defiant, and the world really saying that, look, when the whole tariff talk began, the approach was that, look, maybe the US President is looking at shocking the world, sending shockwaves across the world, then, of course, looking at trade deals and negotiations, and then an implementation. But what has happened today across global markets and India, and as far as India's stock market meltdown is concerned as well, is raising alarms on whether trade war fears are now essentially mounting since the US President remains defiant, and if this will continue to impact global supply chains, global inflation. Remember, consumers, when tariffs will take place, what essentially happens? It essentially makes goods and services expensive for consumers. Inflation takes center stage, and that in turn could lead to a US recession and in turn impact the world, including India as well. So India can remain resilient. India's macro fundamentals remain strong. Economic indicators at large remain upbeat. But having said that, India cannot be insulated from what's happening in the rest of the world.
Right, Sakshi. Thank you so much for getting us the latest on the Indian markets as well as the global markets, which have performed very poorly today, but the Indian markets still remain resilient. Now, moving on to the next story we're tracking. More than 50 countries have reached out to the White House to initiate trade talks after reciprocal tariffs were imposed globally on trade partners of the US officials from the US President Donald Trump's administration, as they defended the move amid the bloodbath at the US stock market after nearly $6 trillion in value was wiped out. Let's listen into what Trump said.
Spoke to a lot of leaders, European, Asian, from all over the world. They're dying to make a deal. But I said, we're not going to have deficits with your country. We're not going to do that, because to me a deficit is a loss. We're going to have surpluses, or we're at worst going to be breaking even. But China would be the worst in the group, because the deficit is so big and it's not sustainable.
Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te announced that Taipei would not retaliate with the sweeping new US tariffs. Offering zero tariffs as a basis for talks with the US, Taiwan was hit by 32% tariffs in the expansive import levies announced by US President Donald Trump. US tariffs, however, do not apply to semiconductors, a major Taiwanese export. Lai also said that his government would instead encourage the purchasing of products from the US to reduce the trade deficit between the two countries. Let's listen in to what he said.
面对美国的对等关税，台湾没有计划采取关税报复。企业对美国的投资承诺，只要符合国家利益，也不会有任何改变。但我们要让美国清楚知道，台湾对于美国经济发展的贡献。更重要的是，我们要积极掌握全球经济情势的变化，加强台美产业合作，提升台湾产业在全球供应链的地位。
Crowds of people angry about the way President Trump is running the country marched and rallied in scores of American cities over the weekend in the biggest day of demonstrations yet by an opposition movement, trying to regain its momentum after the shock of the Republicans' first few weeks in office. The so-called hands-off demonstrations were organized from more than 1,200 locations in all of the 50 states by more than 150 groups, including civil rights organizations, labor unions, LGBTQ plus advocates, veterans, and election activists. The rallies appeared peaceful with no immediate reports of arrest. Asked about the protest, the White House said in a statement that President Trump's position is clear. He will always protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for eligible beneficiaries. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington in a last-ditch effort to negotiate a better trade deal. Days after the US imposed 17% tariffs on Israel, Netanyahu is the first foreign leader to travel to Washington in an attempt to negotiate the trade pact, with the Prime Minister meeting top US officials in Washington. This is the second meeting between the two leaders since Trump returned to the White House in January and comes after the resumption of the hostilities in the Gaza Strip. Trump has pressed Tehran for a new deal on its nuclear program, though little progress has been made, with widespread speculation that Tel Aviv, possibly with US help, might launch a military strike on Iranian facilities if no agreement is reached. Let's go across to my colleague Mohammed Ghazali, who brings us the latest. Ghazali, what results do you think the talks between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump will yield, considering the current market as well as global uncertainty that we're witnessing?
See, both the leaders have spoken that tariffs would be the focus of this visit, of this discussion, but we all know that Trump and Netanyahu will certainly talk about the situation in the Middle East. Israel still believes that there are 59 hostages who are in captivity of Hamas, so Gaza ceasefire will certainly be one of the issues which will be discussed. But besides that, the bigger issue is the threat of Iran, which Israel considers its most hostile and most adverse country to deal with, and that is what everybody is discussing and guessing. Perhaps will Netanyahu push Trump for an escalation with Iran, because the time is ticking. US has given a timeline, a month deadline for Iran to respond to the letter which was sent to Mr. Khamenei. Iran has also responded through a letter by via Oman, or the leaders from Oman who have channeled back the letter to US. But will this negotiation continue? Because Iran says that it is not interested in direct negotiations with US. US says it wants direct negotiations and also an end to the nuclear program of Iran. So will Netanyahu push United States to go for an escalation with Iran is a major issue. The second other issue which will be obviously be under consideration will be the situation in Syria, because Turkey is expanding its base in Syria, its footprints in Syria, and Israel sees it as a threat. So and Turkey being a NATO member is also another puzzle. So will that issue be also discussed in this meeting or not? But certainly the overall situation in Middle East, be it the Gaza ceasefire or the hostage release situation, will be discussed between Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu.
Right, Ghazali, thank you so much for getting us all these details as we forward look to the possible resolution in the Middle East. Now, several powerful Iranian-backed militia groups in Iraq are reportedly preparing to disarm for the first time to avert the threat of an escalating conflict with the US Trump administration. This move comes amid repeated warnings issued by US officials to the Iraqi government since President Donald Trump's return to the White House. Unless the militias are disbanded in Iran, US could likely target the groups with airstrikes, officials have stated according to a report. The militias are part of the Islamic resistance in Iraq, an umbrella group of about 10 hardline Shiite armed factions that collectively command about 50,000 fighters and arsenals that include long-range missiles and anti-aircraft weapons. As the world reels from the impact of US's fresh salvo of tariffs, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is set to declare the end of the era of globalization. This after US President Donald Trump's hardline reciprocal tariffs and America First policy has triggered a global trade war, pushing markets into the shadows of uncertainty. Starmer is reportedly likely to admit that the globalization has failed millions of voters, which is why Trump's economic nationalism is popular among his supporters who believe they have seen no benefits from free trade and mass immigration. This address will be Starmer's first significant intervention since Trump imposed the sweeping charges on imports. The leader of France's National Rally Party, Marine Le Pen, told supporters she would not give up despite being found guilty of embezzling European Union funds and banned from running for office. But large-scale protests against the move did not materialize Sunday.
Voilà donc qu'il faudrait m'éliminer de la vie politique, sans voie de recours possible, au nom d'un soi-disant trouble à l'ordre public démocratique, concept purement et simplement inventé pour l'occasion. Pardon, mais le principal et même l'unique trouble à l'ordre public démocratique, c'est bien celui qui consiste à empêcher l'unique souverain, le peuple, de s'exprimer.
Meanwhile, former French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal on Sunday denounced Marine Le Pen's defiance over her guilty verdict for embezzling public funds. Attal said that the facts were clear, calling Le Pen's party a groupie of US President Donald Trump, as well as a Russian pawn of President Vladimir Putin. Let's listen.
Il ne nous appartient pas de dire si le jugement rendu est bon ou mauvais. Il nous appartient de nous en tenir toujours aux faits. Or, les faits sont clairs. Marine Le Pen et le Rassemblement national ont été reconnus coupables après après 10 ans d'enquête et de procédure, d'avoir détourné des millions d'euros de nos impôts.
At least 32 Palestinians were killed in fresh Israeli airstrikes across the Gaza Strip, mostly women and children. Several neighborhoods were ordered to evacuate in central Gaza's Deir al-Bala neighborhood shortly after about 10 missiles were fired from the strip, the largest barrage from the territory since Israel resumed the war. While Hamas has claimed responsibility, Israel said it intercepted 5. The attacks come as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington to meet President Donald Trump in the White House. Facing various criminal charges for attempting a coup in 2022, former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro led a massive rally supporting an amnesty law that could free him from the criminal charges and eliminate the prison sentences of dozens of supporters who stormed the nation's Congress 2 years ago to protest the election of his successor, Luiz Lula da Silva. Bolsonaro has been charged by Brazilian prosecutors of plotting with 33 others to poison Lula and kill a Supreme Court judge.
Sou psicopata para falar que aquilo que aconteceu no dia 8 de janeiro foi uma tentativa armada de golpe militar. E condeno essas pessoas, como diz no jargão da justiça, de passeada.
With the Hajj pilgrimage around the corner, Saudi Arabia has temporarily suspended the issuance of certain visas to citizens of 14 countries, including India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. The ban on Umrah, business and family visit visas will be effective till around mid-June, coinciding with the conclusion of the pilgrimage to Mecca. The ban impacts 14 nations including India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Egypt, Indonesia, Iraq, Nigeria, Jordan, Algeria, Sudan, Ethiopia, Tunisia, Yemen and Morocco. The step was reportedly taken to prevent individuals from trying to perform Hajj without proper registration. President Draupadi Murmu arrived in Lisbon on Sunday for the first leg of her 4-day state visit to Portugal and the Slovak Republic. Marking the first such visit in nearly 3 decades, the 2-day landmark visit to Portugal comes as the two countries mark 50 years of diplomatic relations. President Murmu will be given a guard of honor and engage in meetings with top leadership, including Portugal's President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, Prime Minister Luís Montenegro and Assembly Speaker. The President will interact with a cross-section of Indian community members, including researchers working in various Portuguese institutions. Rivers have risen and flooding has intensified across the regions of the US South and Midwest, threatening communities already significantly imperiled by days of heavy rainfall and wind, claiming the lives of at least 18 people. Although the rain has begun to recede in some of the most severely impacted areas of Arkansas, Tennessee and Kentucky, water levels continue to rise in various communities, inundating homes and businesses and submerging roads. After the United States exited the World Health Organization earlier this year, taking a huge toll on the agency's funding, WHO is now reportedly proposing to reduce staff numbers and the scale of its work, as it slashes its budget by just over 1/5. US President Donald Trump's administration withdrew the WHO upon taking office in January, saying the Global Health Agency had mishandled the COVID-19 pandemic and other international health crises. The US is by far the UN Health Agency's biggest financial backer, contributing around 18% of its overall funding. It's time for us to slip into a short break. Lots more news and updates coming up on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome to the World Report. Now, South Korean tech giant Samsung is expected to forecast a 21% drop in first quarter profit on Tuesday. The company has been facing stagnant sales of artificial intelligence chips and losses in its contract chip manufacturing business since mid-2024. According to projections, the company is likely to post an operating profit of 5.2 trillion won for the January-March quarter, down from 6.6 trillion won during the same period last year. This is also coming at a time when Samsung is undergoing a management reshuffle following the unexpected death of co-CEO Han Jong-hee in late March. China's Horizon Robotics announced that it would cooperate with Volkswagen on advanced driver assistance solution, extending its cooperation with the German automaker. Its Horizon SuperDrive smart driving solution will land in Volkswagen models through Volkswagen software unit CARIAD's research and development, with Horizon CARIAD's joint venture with Horizon Robotics. Shifting focus to sports, Gujarat Titans pacer Ishant Sharma has been fined 25% of his match fees and handed one demerit point for breaching the IPL Code of Conduct under Article 2.2. During his team's match against Sunrisers Hyderabad last week, Article 2.2 of the IPL Code of Conduct pertains to the abuse of cricket or ground equipment either intentionally, recklessly or negligently. Despite the incident, Gujarat Titans secured a convincing 7-wicket win over Sunrisers Hyderabad, marking their third consecutive victory and moving them up to the second place on the IPL 2025 points table.